Good morning, church. I just want to talk about something that I believe God has been laying on my heart over the last few days. A short while ago, I spoke to you about the gift of the Spirit and would we notice if the gift of the Spirit was removed from the church of today. I just want to take that a little bit further now, and it's not about would the church about the gift of the Spirit not being with us, but I just want to look at one specific gift of the Spirit, which I believe um, God really wants us to pray about as a church and as individuals, and that is the gift of faith. When we look at the gifts of the Spirit, whether it's the Romans 12 list or whether it's the 1 Corinthians 12 list, um, we see and do notice that the gift of tongues is being used personally and sometimes in corporate um, fellowship. We see when tongues is used in the church, we see the gift of interpretation. It may not be used as much as it may have been once. We see the gift of prophecy, and we see prophetic words and visions and dreams and pictures being shared. Uh, we sometimes see the gift of healings, maybe again not as much as we want. We certainly see the gifts of pastors and preachers and evangelists and teachers. We see a lot of the gifts. We see the gift of discernment being used. Certainly, I see that and I recognise that. But when I think of the gift of the Spirit, the gift of faith, I wonder. So let me just talk to you about what a definition I've read on the gift of faith is. It says, the gift of faith may be defined as the special gift whereby the Spirit provides Christians with extraordinary confidence in God's promises, God's power, and God's presence so that they can take heroic stands for the future of God's work in the church. The spiritual gift of faith is exhibited by one with a strong and unshakable confidence in God, His word, and His promises. Examples of people who had the gift of faith are then listed in Hebrews 11. So that's a definition that we get of faith, the gift of faith, and I'm sure we could look and read lots of other gifts of other definitions of the gift of faith. But if the gift of faith is one of the gifts listed in 1 Corinthians 12, we then have the passage on love, 1 Corinthians 13. But 1 Corinthians 14, the very first verse says, follow the way of love and eagerly desire the gifts of the Spirit. And he then talks about especially prophecy. But he talks about eagerly desiring the gifts of the Spirit. And I just wonder what would happen if I personally eagerly desired the gift of faith, if we as a church eagerly desired the gift of faith, if the church in general eagerly desired the gift of faith, and we then received that gift of faith, which gave us the confidence to do heroics with God, to pray, not half-heartedly, but pray knowing that God would move, to pray with the faith that would move a mountain. So I just want to ask you to just join me in praying that God will release more of the gift of faith on myself, on yourself, on the church, that we would know the gift of faith. In Hope Church Colby, we've seen some of that when we prayed for David Carson, if you remember. Let's ask God for more of the gift of his faith, because after all, he says if we ask, we will receive, and it says we have not because we ask not. So let's ask him. I'll just pray. Lord, I just thank you for the gifts of the Spirit that you provide for us, that we don't have to do stuff on our own. Lord, I just pray that you will release the gift of faith in me personally. You will release the gift of faith more in Hope Church. You will release the gift of faith more in the church worldwide, that we will see your church prepared and ready to do heroic things with you as you direct and as you guide, that your name will be renowned in all the world.